world. I could feel all this death.
Everything they built will fall! And from the ashes of their world, we'll build a better one!
You've got to see this incredible video we just came across. It's out of Russia in Siberia, and what you're about to see is the entire roof actually being blown off of a building. Look at this. How dangerous is that? And amazingly here, nobody was walking down there. Nobody got hurt. No injuries, no deaths, or anything like that. A couple of things to take out of this video. First of all, as you get higher up in the atmosphere, the wind is usually a little bit stronger. Also, the more surface area you have on something, the easier the wind can blow it down. Now, look, I would eyeball this wind at probably about 40 to 60 miles an hour. Yes, it's a sustained wind, and yes, that's probably enough to do a pretty good amount of damage. But once the edge of that roof just started to peel up a little bit, let's run this back one more time so you can see it. All right, so watch this. You start to see just the very edge get pulled up, and all of a sudden the wind can affect that entire surface, and then the whole thing blows down. I'm still in shock that nobody was down there, nobody got hurt, but man, the power of Mother Nature, is that incredible or what?
These images are just incredible. So Public Works crews actually just removed a huge piece of metal roofing from all the way up in that tree. It's down here on the ground now. Look at how massive that is. That's how strong the winds are. And I want to take you guys over here to take a look at this home over here. So the roof was completely blown off of this. This home is considered a total loss. So crews have been out here. You can see them over from Pasco County, have been cutting pieces of this rubber roofing and all of these pieces of metal and stacking them up, waiting for Public Works crews. But they aren't the only ones that are helping out. A bunch of the neighbors here are also making sure to help clean up.
People live in here, they know everybody, and they're going to help each other out when they can.
This is really what a disaster, a localized disaster, is all about. It's community helping community.
And today the Red Cross was out here eventually helping people get through the worst of the damage. But most incredibly, the Red Cross didn't actually have to give out any money or hand out shelters to anybody. And that's because the neighbors were so great about providing all of that shelter just for their friends and family. Now back out here live again, Public Works crews are out here. They will be out here for the remainder of the night trying to help clean up this damage. But as for the people here, there's still many that are still out of their homes tonight.
And Lauren, we're certainly feeling for all of those people. Glad to hear, though, the neighbors are really coming together, though. What is next for all the people who still have a lot of work to do, probably a lot of questions too? What's next for them?
There are so many questions tonight, so they still don't have a dollar amount on all of the damage here. We still have to figure out who has had insurance on their homes, who has not, so they would have to file claims. And also, it's just of when they can actually get back into their homes. So while we said that the Red Cross hasn't, had to hand out any shelter, they may be able to do so at a later date if that is needed. But until then, they're just staying with friends, and they say they're just grateful to be alive. Back to you.
People on the Big Island tonight are cleaning up after the storm damaged their property. Alex Serval continues our coverage. Alex?
Aloha, Joe. Viewers sent us several pictures of the damage through our reported feature on our website. One resident tells me she believes the damage on her property was worse than Tropical Storm Iselle. Water gushing down Highway 19 outside Pepeakeo on the Big Island, forcing drivers to stop, trapping some for at least 45 minutes. Also on the Big Island, storm damage in Papaico.
If you look on the floor, you can see pieces of our greenhouse roof.
Large chunks of a greenhouse blew into this bathroom. The wind blew out the screens on several windows and left a lot of debris on the floor. Here's a different view showing a big hole in the greenhouse roof and damage to more property.
I think it's worse than Iselle because in Iselle we lost part of our greenhouse roof as well, and we had replaced probably half of the greenhouse roof. but it was the older half and the vent system.
Residents tell me the crashing and smashing was so hard, they thought it was a tornado. The National Weather Service says there was a strong cell over Papaico this afternoon that also caused a waterspout seen from the Hilo airport. But no tornado.
This has been a surprisingly dynamic system in what has been a really quiet winter.
There was also lightning strikes and clusters of thunderstorms throughout the islands that are now moving offshore throughout the night. And meteorologists say this storm put a little dent in the drought. Now, if this is the last storm of the season, we could have a very dry summer. Alex Serval, KHON 2 News.
Officials say a massive landslide could swallow a central Washington state neighborhood at any moment. Residents in the Whispering Ridge neighborhood of Chelan County have been asked to evacuate. Experts say the land is so unstable it could give way without warning. Record rainfall has the ground more saturated than it's been in decades. And recent storms and snowmelt aren't helping things. Water and power to the neighborhood have been turned off. 2 homes have already been deemed too dangerous to live in. Still, some residents are holding out and refusing to leave.
Of the world. But right now, there's a lot less fishing and a lot more concern about what's happening to their valuable and vulnerable ecosystem. If you walk up and down Indian River Lagoon, you will see this. Thousands of dead fish belly up in the water. There are several different factors going into play here. One is the state received about triple their average rainfall for the month of January. All of that rainwater and runoff has gone straight into the rivers and the lagoon. Not to mention, because of El Nino, temperatures were warmer than normal, allowing for a toxic algae bloom and brown tide to take over. The algae bloom depletes the oxygen from the water, in turn killing the fish, and has also killed more than half the lagoon's seagrass. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Research Institute says the fish kills happen all the time, all over the state. But this one is massive. Farther south, there's another problem. Lake Okeechobee is the highest it's been in 10 years. So right now, the Army Corps of Engineers is draining it. Billions of gallons of fresh water pouring out of Lake Okeechobee. This brackish water affecting the salinity of all the estuaries. The Army Corps of Engineers says that they are backing off to a safer discharge. But if you ask the fishermen in the area, they say it's too little, too late.
Here in the Live Center, we're continuing to follow the story of the dead whale found at Torrey Pines at State Beach. Now, we blurred part of this image. It's a little graphic with the whale being lifted on a forklift here. We also have a live picture from the ground from our 10 News breaking news tracker, where you can see the whale there is cordoned off so that people don't get too close to it. Now, Sky 10 was over the whale about 20 minutes ago, where you can see people looking at the whale from a distance there at the bottom part of your screen. Now, the whale was found about a mile south of the State Reserve information booth. It was moved closer to the information booth, and we have learned that the whale will be brought to the landfill tomorrow.
This is a shelter of an entirely different kind, the Pacific Marine Mammal Center in Laguna Beach. Staff here are tending to seal and sea lion pups found stranded, abandoned, and starving.
The warmer water out there has forced certain types of fish that seals and sea lions like to eat into colder parts of the Pacific. And that means it's tough for marine mammals to feed themselves, let alone nourish their young.
There have been thousands of animals rescued, but thousands more died at sea.
I'm seeing a lot of the pups coming in underweight in record numbers. They're all emaciated, they're all coming in with a lot of parasites.
It's heartbreaking. They are skin and bones. They're extremely lethargic, so our effort is spent on rehydrating them, creating fish smoothies that have medications and electrolytes in it to bring them back.
Helpless creatures, both human and animal, at the mercy of El Nino. Rob Reynolds, Al Jazeera, Santa Monica, California.
Fiddler is the Grand Chief of the Anishinaabe Nation that represents Kashechewan. He's going to be part of today's meeting, and he joins me now from Thunder Bay, Ontario. Thank you for taking the time to speak with us, sir, today. Grand Chief Fiddler, I want to start by asking what you are hoping to learn, first of all, from this meeting today.
I think we just want to get more information on what's exactly happening in Kashechewan, and we're looking forward to hearing from the medical team later on this afternoon.
From what you're hearing, do you sense that they're any closer to figuring out exactly what is causing these rashes and skin lesions?
I think right now they're just trying to determine who else needs medical attention, and from what we're hearing, that there may be more children that may be required to be evacuated from the community in the coming days.
Well, what is happening to those who are affected by this mysterious rash right now? You say more may be affected. I gather some had been taken to hospitals or to other communities. What's the latest you're hearing on that?
Well, the initial evacuations that were made over the weekend and on Monday, those children were sent to Timmins, and depending on the number of children that may require further treatment, we may need to look at other centers, including Kingston and possibly Toronto.
We, as you know, we don't know yet the exact cause of this mysterious rash and the lesions. We know the health minister, Jane Philpott, says the water in the community is not to blame, but I gather you disagree, that you say that that can't be ruled out as a possible cause. Can you tell me more about that?
Well, I don't think we can rule out anything at this point. I think almost all the community members, from what we've heard through their leadership, they do not trust their water source even to bathe or do their laundry, never mind drinking it. So I think what we're asking for and what they're saying is that they want an outside independent inspection team to come in to examine their water treatment plant and to test the quality of their water.
Certainly, as a parent, we know that when your child is sick, it's always agonizing. But when your child is sick and you don't know exactly what's causing it, I can't imagine how stressful that must be. What are you hearing from the people of Kashechewan yourself?
Well, that was my first immediate reaction when I saw the pictures coming out from Cache over the weekend, and we made arrangements right away to send a plane up there to get those children out, and knowing that there may be more that may be at risk. That's why we're having these conference calls to ensure that we, that the children that need medical attention are getting it on a timely basis. And we're going to have another call this afternoon to hear from the medical team that's on the ground right now.
Well, what are you hearing from the people there? Is there a sense of frustration, or is there a sense of fear because the source is at present unknown?
Well, frustration for sure. I mean, this has been a long-standing issue for Saskatchewan, and the fact that they've raised this issue time and time again, and they're still experiencing the health crisis of their children is definitely frustrating for the parents. And I think we begin to get to the bottom of what's going on and to work with the community to develop some long-term solutions for the future.
Here, those glass factories are demanding clean air.
Yeah, coalitions have been formed. People have rallied together around that common cause. Some are even moving. Here's our Cole Miller now with more.
From the streets of downtown, confronting DEQ leaders,
Build, treat, or bleed.
Protesting along Powell, and coming face to face with Bullseye.
We want you to run a model business that Portland can be proud of.
Brittany Hamlin has been around for all of it.
I try to do as much as I can.
I caught up with her today at her southeast Portland home, just blocks away from the glass factory.
We just made, plans to move out.
A month ago, KOIN-6 tested her family's soil, where arsenic and lead were both detected.
All I wanted was my children to have good, clean air. And then, they gave us chromium and cadmium and arsenic and nickel.
We demand that you do your job.
When all of this came to light, crowds packed into Cleveland High with their concerns. It was the first of many public meetings.
This is new information, and it's hard to hear. We've got a health concern.
Those concerns then made their way to Salem.
I open my door, and I breathe regular, nasty stench.
State lawmakers responding.
Obviously, the regulations that we have in place to accommodate industry and pollution, they're going to need to be examined.
More than a month ago, I ran into Bob Tuzignot.
I think it might be a grave concern.
I went back to his place today, right near Cleveland High.
I've been here for 40 years.
He tells me he's already made a call into his doctor.
We both have appointments to have our blood tested and the urine test.
And while he does feel for the owner of Bullseye,
it sounds like he was doing basically everything that he was supposed to with the DEQ.
He's pointing fingers elsewhere.
I think our local government is corrupt, period.
Wayne Hadley shares a similar view.
I think it woke the people up. I don't know if it really woke the city up.
He, too, has lived near Bullseye for more than 40 years.
There's other industries around that are polluting the air big time.
And while he doesn't think local government is doing its job, he also has his own take on this whole thing.
There's been a lot of panic and stuff, mostly, I think, news hype. And I've grown gardens. I'm not dead. I'm 71. I'm not dead.
And we're glad to hear that. No matter which side you're on, though, a conversation has started. There's no denying that, and it will continue. It's a conversation many hope leads to change.
I'm really proud of the community. I'm really proud of everybody who works really hard.
They've turned to social media, especially Facebook, creating a couple of groups even, the South Portland Air Quality and the Eastside Portland Air Coalition. That group has even put together an interactive map where people who have been tested can post their results, gives people a better idea of what's going on around them.
The governor of North Carolina signed a controversial law that restricts protections for gays, lesbians, and transgendered individuals. The law came in response to an ordinance in the city of Charlotte, which allowed transgender individuals to use a bathroom of their choosing. The new law says bathrooms or locker rooms be designated for use only by people based on their biological sex.
I came out here today because I think that this law was unjust
The way that they did it was shady, and they know that it was shady.
This is not over. This is not over. This is not over. This is not over. You have the power. We have the power. We have the power. We have the power. We have the power.
There's a deep and passionate community that stands for love and justice, and then we're not gonna become political pawns, and we are gonna fight really hard to make sure that McCrory does not get reelected.
This is a community. This is not just people who are on the outskirts of society. And I think that's what these bills say, is that they don't understand transgender people. Well, we're here to say, hi, what are your gender pronouns? Mine are she and her.
Anti-terror operations underway in Brussels. At least 6 suspects under arrest. CCTV's Kate Parkinson is in Brussels with all of the developments. Kate, what can you tell us?
Well, absolutely some big news tonight, Mike. We have heard from authorities here in Brussels that they have arrested 6 individuals who they say are directly connected to Tuesday's attacks on the airport and the subway. What we don't know is whether these 6 individuals include 2 key suspects that we know they were looking for, those being the so-called man in white, this individual who was seen at the airport, who is believed to have wheeled explosives in to the departure hall and then fled the building before the bombs exploded. And then we also heard today that there was potentially a second bomber involved in the metro attack who could also be on the run. So these were 2 key suspects that the police were looking for. We don't know at this stage whether the 6 arrests tonight included those 2 individuals, but it is certainly a major development. In other news, we have heard from French authorities this evening that they have made an arrest in the suburbs of Paris, a man that they say was in the, quote, advanced stages of planning an attack. Now, the French authorities, it's important to point out, are not saying whether this arrest was linked to the Brussels attacks or indeed to the Paris attacks in November or last January, but it is still a major development and an indication of the extent that the security services are taking, the measures that they're taking to prevent further attacks from taking place. Meanwhile, some harrowing footage has emerged from the airport, taken very shortly after the 2 bombs went off. The footage was filmed by a taxi driver who was parked outside the airport. When he heard the explosions, he rushed inside looking for his son. Let's take a look at my report, but before we do, just be aware that it does contain some images that some viewers may find distressing. It's a scene of total devastation. There are bodies buried under the rubble. And the sounds of people screaming, the wounded crying out for help. The taxi driver who filmed this didn't find his son inside the airport, but they were reunited later. Others have not been so lucky. Relatives and friends of those still missing since the explosions have been posting pictures on social media, desperately trying to trace their loved ones. The Belgian Prime Minister, Charles Michel, said their wait must be agonizing as he paid tribute to the victims and their families.
We think about the children who have lost their papa or their mama. We think about the families torn apart. We think about those who have lost their partner, a friend, a loved one violently, unfairly and cruelly taken away. We also think about the women and men injured, for most of them seriously wounded, for all those who will carry permanent injuries in their flesh and in their heart. We also think about the families who have waited or are still waiting anxiously for some news of their loved ones.
The names of the 31 people killed in the attacks have not yet been officially announced. Authorities have asked for time to identify the victims. The process is slow, they say, because some of the bodies are in such poor condition, a detail that only adds to the distress. Well, Brussels is still observing, actually Belgium, I should say, is still observing 3 days of national mourning. You can probably see behind me the candles and flowers that have been laid out in tribute. You can probably also see the flags. Now, this really reflects what a multicultural city Brussels is, and actually we do know that among the dead and the wounded, some 40 nationalities are represented, and that really does reflect how far-reaching the devastating effect of these attacks was.
Fred, we're looking at some new video coming in. I don't think obviously you can see it, but you can talk to us about this, of the man that was wounded and taken into custody. What are you seeing? What are you hearing?
Yeah, well, it meshes really, Kate, with what eyewitnesses told us as well as we were covering this raid. We were obviously outside the police cordon as this raid was going on, but they said that there was a man who apparently was armed, who was on a tram station, which is where we are right now, and that he apparently was threatening. It was then the police was alerted to his presence there. They then shot him, and the witnesses told us initially that he had been shot, but had been shot in a way that he was not killed. They believed it was the leg or something, and certainly the video does seem to corroborate what these people were saying. It also was the case that there were bomb disposal squads that were called to the scene as this massive police operation was unfolding, and it appears as though a bomb robot was also utilized during all of this. We could see that the man appeared to have some sort of backpack on him, and that bomb robot seemed to have checked out whether there was anything explosive inside that backpack.
Local media report explosions were heard during a police search of a house in Brussels. The house search in the district of Schaerbeek on Friday is part of an ongoing investigation into the Tuesday attacks in the Belgian capital, which killed 31 people, including 1 Chinese national and 2 Americans. The report also said a man was, quote, neutralized during the operation. Belgian police have reportedly arrested a 7th person Friday morning in the Brussels district of Forest. A huge manhunt is underway for at least 2 other suspects. Meanwhile, local media report German police have arrested a 28-year-old Moroccan man. The man's mobile phone text messages may link him to one of the Brussels bombers.
The end of a Friday football game, and it's time to present the trophy. But among the crowd, a suicide bomb. The explosion killed dozens of people and injured more than 100. It happened in Iskandariya, 50 kilometers south of Baghdad. ISIL has claimed responsibility for the attack, identifying 17-year-old local Saifullah al-Ansari as the bomber. Iraqi government officials believe it could be ISIL's losses on the battlefield that may be provoking an increase in attacks like these. Less than 24 hours after the bombing, the UN Secretary General arrived in Baghdad. Ban Ki-moon says ISIL is exploiting sectarian divisions. Again, he called on Iraq's government to encourage reconciliation between Sunni and Shia communities. In northern Iraq, the army says it started clearing villages surrounding the ISIL-held city of Mosul. It's in preparation for an offensive to retake the city sometime this year. Mosul is already cut off on 3 sides by Kurdish Peshmerga forces. The US Defense Department says it's looking to increase the number of American troops in Iraq to support the country's ground fight against ISIL.
discipline.